Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
Oh, Grant. We are Tedless today, but that's okay.
Well, let's not fight about it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I can't stand that guy, but whatever. But before we get into today's episode, we should tell everybody how they can enjoy Card Talk. We have a lot of different ways that you can do it. If you're watching this on the YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. Watching this on a video, you can go and get us on the run on a podcast feed, anyone that you want. We're on all the popular ones. You can also, and all the not so popular ones too. You can also, if you're listening to us on the podcast, you can also go to YouTube. And also on the YouTube, we have Micah, who does a live playthrough of the game every couple of weeks for us. We call that Second Breakfast. There's a lot of different Second Breakfasts, I think, in the community, but that's our Second Breakfast. And then Matt, Cat Attack 22, is over at the blog, and he's letting us, he writes a review of the cards as we release them. So he's been diligently keeping up with the pod over there. So if you want to read a review of the card, or see how Matt thinks about it, go ahead and do that. I'll put all that information right over there. You can see it there, and then also there's an email address. You can get a hold of all the guys that way. And then lastly, there's a Patreon if you want to support the show, help keep the lights on here. That'd be great. But Grant, what's today's card?
Well, today we are going to be doing some standing and some fighting. We are going to revisit the core set for Stand and Fight, the X-Cost Spirit event, which has action. Choose an ally with a printed cost of X in any player's discard pile. Put that ally into play under your control. The chosen ally can belong to any sphere of influence. With the text, "We will fight on, Boromir, the Fellowship of the Ring."
And so I think it's important, although everybody in the community probably knows it because it's such a surprise. The ruling on this from the very beginning of the game is that whichever ally you pick has to belong to a sphere. It cannot be neutral, so you cannot stand and fight Gandalf. Gandalf has no sphere of influence. Despite we saying, we in the community saying he's neutral. Neutral is not a sphere. Neutral just means he has no sphere. So you have to pick an ally that has a sphere of influence. So, I don't know. What do you think of Stand and Fight?
Very powerful.
Yeah.
It is a very powerful card. I mean, does it see as much play as any other card? No. But that, I think it's just down to how people deck build. You generally don't play cards for recurring, say, an ally, because of the fact that you're generally trying not to lose those allies. The biggest place I would say it probably benefits is in a Rohan deck, where you're discarding the allies to get their effects. And even then, you've got gambling to do the hand to recur back to the hand.
Yeah.
But this card is very powerful. I mean, especially if you're using it to, say, pull out a chump blocker that you need for an emergency defense, or even if it's to, say, deal with an enemy that's already been damaged and there's a Gondorian spearman sitting in somebody's discard pile. You can quickly bring it out and deal with that enemy without having to actually follow through with the attack. There's a lot of situational uses for it. But again, it is very situational.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that I think that I don't know if you meant to say this in the way that you did, but you bring up a great use for stand and fight is that this allows you to bring an ally out during any action window and not just the planning phase. So one of the beauties of sneak attack, for example, is that you get to bring out an ally during a phase where it's not expected. Well, this
Yep.
allows you to bring out an ally as long as you have the spirit resources to pay for it, allow you to bring out an ally that's in anybody's discard pile
Of any sphere.
of any sphere, as long as it's a sphere. It can't be a neutral card. And so, and I think that this is, I think that is great because you said, you bring out a chump blocker. So you don't have to bring out the chump blocker in the planning phase. You can do it in the encounter phase if you want, because it's an action. It's not a planning action. It's not a combat action.
You can even do it in the combat phase before combat is actually started.
Is there an action window there?
It's the beginning of the phase. So you've got an action window you've basically got your encounter phase, and then you've got the combat phase where shadow cards are dealt, and you've got an action window just before the attacks start.
Okay. I thought that there wasn't an action window at the beginning of combat. I thought you get archery. I thought you get archery and then shadow cards and then there's an action window. Either way, the point, whether there's an action window there or not, is that you can
different days.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can bring this guy out. You can bring out the ally whenever, and it can be any ally. Like you said, it could be a chump blocker, it could be Beorn, it could be, who knows? It could be like the Rohan, archetype where you're,
it could be Hammer for that ultimate defense.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of
good cards that it could be, and a lot of bad cards that you could use to chump block.
Right. And it's good. There's, we did a little series when the revised core set was released, but called Core Combos. This card works well with Spirit Awen because what you can do is you can discard an off sphere card to Spirit Awen to buff her willpower, and then you can use Stand and Fight to use spirit resources to bring that off sphere card into play under your control. So let's say, and that was something that people do with just revised core set is maybe they have all three spirit heroes, Dunhere, Eleanor, and Eowyn. They put Beorn in that deck to help offset, and to help buff Eowyn's willpower. And then you discard Beorn. You would never be able to play Beorn normally because it's a tactics card, but then because you have Stand and Fight, you can pay the 6 spirit resources to bring Beorn out under your control, and that's good. And actually, it's neat because it gets around some of those things in the player card pool that where you have to pay 3, put 3 resources from 3 different heroes, or those sorts of requirements, because this is the cost of you're paying the cost of the event, you're not paying the ally. So, it's neat that you can get around some of those things.
I mean, we've recently just done another card for the cost of X, being Gandalf's Search.
That was fun.
Yeah. And as I said then, there's a total of 5 X cost cards in the card pool. And not all of them are great, but this is definitely one of the better, if not the best. I'd say it's probably rank 2 for being the top tier of X cost cards. The first being another Spirit one event being Reforged.
Yeah.
But where this falls down is the fact that it's just not any ally. It has to be an ally of Sphere.
Yeah, and I feel like that was what the people, the designers saw it like afterwards. They were like, "Oh, this is bad that they can recycle Gandalf and
Gandalf,
basically have
yeah.
6 Gandalfs in their hand." Um,
Well, 9 because if
I'm going to
you've got
say that
sneak
any
attack.
sphere, right?
But the only downside of this card is well, I wouldn't say it's a downside. It's the fact that you've got that cost. So it's cost X. Whereas, as Ted said in Gandalf Search, it's a great way to get around like Nameless Things and Foundation of Stones.
Mm-hmm.
But as for using this to bring back like an ally like Bjorn, like David's just said, when you're playing an off-sphere card in a ally in a all spirit deck, you've actually got to draw this card to make use of it.
Yeah.
And if you never draw it in, say, the game, then did that actually work? No, because you
Right.
didn't draw it. But I can see the value of it. Um, so, what do you
Yeah.
think of the artwork?
Oh, okay. The artwork. I was just going to say one more thing about like as your card pool expands and as different archetypes come out. I mean, there are archetypes where you want to discard, and
Yep.
being able to discard cards like the Noldor. You discard cards to make the Noldor thing go. So this is great, or can be great in that Noldor. You can discard some,
Yeah.
an Eowyn, and then pull that Eowyn right back out, and you know,
Noldor, Rohan are two of
right,
the biggest discarding archetypes.
right. And Rohan seems to never want to like work, but the Noldor, it's really nice. And then even in like a dwarf mining deck, it's possible that you just start mining off allies just
Yeah.
because that's the way the mining works. So being able to bring back
Yeah.
any dwarf, because a lot of times you're using spirit dying in that deck, and not leadership dying. So anyways, I mean, there's still a lot of uses for this
Oh,
card in the card
definitely.
pool. Not
Oh,
not as many at the beginning, because like you said at the top of the show, is that you're banking on having allies in your discard pile, which most of the time that's not where you want them. So and so yeah, so as the card pool grew, this card became less and less like useful, because you weren't chump blocking as much, or instead of bringing out a blocker from your discard pile, you just had one in your hand, like you had just more cards that you could choose from. But I don't think it ever, I don't think that this card is completely out of favor. Stand and Fight is still a card that can be used to affect today.
I agree with everything you've just said there. Um, it isn't a bad card by any means. Are there anything that you'd rather use in its place? I don't cards that can recur an ally
Yeah.
off the top of my head. And for what it does really well. So the artwork on it, I actually like the artwork on this.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a general Gondor or Rohan. It's just a general character. It may be, because it says Boromir is credited with the. Yeah, but I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the Paths of the Dead a little bit, but
I
I don't
can
know.
see. Well, are those orcs in front?
I think.
Um, so orcs. It looks like mountains around the side of them.
Right.
I would say it's probably the hill where Emyn Wheel, but there was no real big battle in the Emyn Wheel.
Yeah.
Um, but it's good artwork. It catches your eye.
Yeah. It's for the core set. I think that this is good artwork. Like, and I hate to say this. It seems like we've done this whole string of shows here where I've been like, oh, the artwork is good, but I think that this game specifically, like the artwork, has been lauded as being some of the best, highest quality artwork of any card game. And so when you see artwork like this, and you're like, oh, it's good. I'm not putting down like it's quality artwork. I just know that
It gets better.
that the artwork gets better than what this card has to offer. So, like,
I mean,
and so that's what I mean. Like, it's great for the core set, but then, you get these great artists later on that just come along and just make the game
for for people that have just started with like the revised core set and maybe have some of the later expansions. When this first came out, 2014, this was great art. Every piece of artwork that came out was top quality, and it's only gotten better since. There are a few cards that are exceptions to that rule, but on the whole, the artwork has just exponentially got better.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. It just keeps getting better and better and better.
So other than that, are we ready to ring this card?
Let's ring it. And you know what I say, Grant? We have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, and where a 1 is the one card to rule them all, or a really good card, and a 10 is a card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. So, I feel like I've been asking you to go first a lot. So I will go first this time with Stand and Fight. And so while I think this card is good and I think it still has use, I still don't have a tendency to run it much with the play style that I use, because I am trying not to have allies in my discard pile. And I'm not saying that that's not a thing to do. Like, I'm not trying to be like a pretentious deck builder. I'm just saying, like, I know that there's times when you have allies in your discard pile, but like with the decks that I run, that's the cost of doing business, is that I'll chump, and like it doesn't matter that it's in the discard. I don't need that guy back. So, so I don't run this card very often. But here's the thing: for a core set card, I still consider this card when I build decks with Spirit. Now, the problem with Spirit is there's so many good cards in Spirit that seem to be staples that this card sometimes gets cut. So, like in a Bond of Friendship deck where you have some deck building constraints, this card doesn't seem to make the cut because I only have 10 slots for Spirit cards. So that's my Test of Wills and Galathram's Greetings and unexpected courages, and hasty strokes and then whatever. And so it seems like this card, on the list of Spirit card staples, this card falls a little bit. It's not necessarily a staple card for sure, but and so. But I still think this card has a legit space. But while I like it, and while it still has a strong place in the card pool, especially for the core, for being a core set card and having, all these cards out there, I still think I have to give this like a 6. I'm not building my Stand and Fight deck. I guess this card also maybe in a Caldara deck may work. I don't know. The Caldara. It's a strange archetype anyways, but anyways, Grant, what do you think?
I agree with everything you just said, and I also give it a 6. It's not the best card in the game. It's not the worst card in the game. Do I use it? I don't use it at all. I don't build. My building of decks, especially recently, don't run allies. So
yeah, you're in your 300s builds, right?
Well, yeah, I think I'm more famous for my Three Hunters build than I am for my Power of Grim Beyond build, which I use to tackle the nightmare quests.
Right.
But my Three Hunters builds obviously have a constraint of not using allies. So yes, I could put this in a Three Hunters deck to pull another ally out of somebody else's deck. But how would that work for the contract? Would that ally just get discarded because I'm not allowed allies?
You're just not allowed allies in your deck.
Well, exactly. So I could do that.
Right.
And Three Hunters generally have a lot of resources after they've pulled out all their attachments.
Right.
So it could be a way of getting around, say, just having the three heroes.
Yeah.
If you, so you put, say, three of them in, and your teammates have lost a couple of allies. Oh, great! I can pull out a Vassal of the Windlord for one, or I could pull out that Legolas that's just been beaten by the troll,
Right.
just to give some more damage on the board, and I've got those resources there to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, that's not how I play. It's just like,
right.
But I can see uses for that.
Right.
So, but I'm sticking by the 6 rating that I've given it.
Okay. Well, there you have it, everybody. Looks like Grant and I agree. We've been doing a lot of agreeing tonight, so that's okay.
Yeah, it makes a change from back when we started where we couldn't agree on anything.
I know. We still at least you're not doing half ratings anymore, so that's good.
Well, it could be a 6.5.
Yeah. It's actually the square root of 39. That's what I agree. Think that this is. Anyways. Okay, everybody. Thank you. That is Stand and Fight. And join us again next week as we talk about more cards in the game. Have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.